Hey, Zach.
How's it going?
All right. How you doing?
Doing okay. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, hold on. I'm just going to plug my phone in and we'll get started.
Yeah.
All right, you look good. You sound good. You ready to
Oh,
go?
yeah. They're ready.
All right, let's go. So I have a whole intro that I pre-record and everything.
Yeah.
Let's get started with questions. So there are certain things that come into the NHL and change the game forever. Goalie masks, the curvature on the blade, titanium sticks. And then there are some other things, one in particular that I so fondly remember you wearing. Most hockey pants stop right above the knee. But for a couple seasons, Clarke, you decided to wear hockey pants that went all the way down to the ankles. And if I remember correctly, it was kind of you and some Whalers players. I've always been curious, how did you like them and why do you think they didn't catch on?
Well, the reason that we started wearing them in Philadelphia was because all the junior players in Canada were wearing them. So all the players coming into the NHL that's all they had worn was those long pants. And we made the wrong guess that maybe the NHL would all be going to them soon. And what we found out, I guess with some validity, is that you slid a lot further on the ice. So if you fell and happened to be going in the boards, you'd be going in a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
And the goaltenders with the long black pants, they said it was harder to pick the puck up.
So functionally, they just didn't work as well either.
No, but as far as comfort and even because the inner stuff fit right against your body and didn't move, they were probably a little more protective than the pants that we used to wear in those days, you know. But
I don't know if you're familiar with an actress named Jennifer Grey. She was in a movie called Dirty Dancing with Patrick Swayze.
right,
And she had a unique nose. It was kind of, you saw her nose and immediately you knew who she was. Someone decided to tell her to get a nose job. And after that, she kind of just looked like a bunch of other people and her path to stardom was kind of cut short. I was, when you Google image yourself, I'm sure you do it as much as I do. There's all these lists of the greatest hockey smiles of all time. And of course, when you're smiling, you got a few missing there. A couple questions about the teeth. Was it a tough decision to go to get them replaced, knowing that your iconic look for over a decade was, missing the front four choppers?
no, actually, when I was done playing, I went to the dentist and I said, look, instead of me wearing the mouth 4 teeth, I said, why don't we just pull all my teeth out and just give me 2 full plates?
Mm-hmm.
I said, wearing a plate didn't bother me, but by that time that was out of the question. He said, we'll put permanent ones in. You're not pulling all your teeth out like that. So, so they wouldn't even. He said, we would never do something like that. So they put them in permanently.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to get used to your new look? You flash the pearly whites in front of the mirror and it's like, wow, this is the new me.
Yeah, this is it. I don't know. It didn't, it was such a routine for players in those days. Take your teeth out and put them in your pocket and go play hockey. Put them back in and away you go. I know that none of that would happen anymore.
No, now, I can't. The last player I remember losing teeth was Paul Stastny. And he got hit in the mouth with a puck, and there he is on the ice just trying to find all of his teeth.
Yeah.
I have this vague memory, and I couldn't confirm it by finding any footage of it. But I seem to remember there's video of you on the bench. One of your teeth fell out. You glanced at it, gave it no more than a passing thought, and then went back to watching the action on the ice. Is my memory correct?
It's fairly close. We were playing in Minnesota one night, and one of their players, I was sitting on the bench, and I'd been missing 2 teeth at that time, and one of their players fired the puck and just hit me in the mouth. And I was obviously come off the ice and I was breathing. I had my mouth open, and it hit the tooth, knocked the tooth out onto the ice, and didn't break it. I just had a hole in my gum. So the linesman picked the tooth up and gave it to me. What am I going to do with this? I just threw it away. I didn't, it's no good to me.
I mean, at that time, who would have known eBay ever would have come about, and that, hockey memorabilia would get weirder and weirder. Yeah, had you kept that definitely would be on some maniac fan's mantle right now. That would be part of their home tour. And this is Flyers captain Bobby Clarke's right incisor. Did you make fun of my dad for wearing a helmet?
No.
No.
I made fun of him for a lot of other reasons, but not helmet.
Could you give me some of those reasons?
Well, little Yuki from Regina, Saskatoon? No, he was Regina, wasn't he?
He was Saskatoon.
Saskatoon.
Yeah, from the Blades.
I used to remind him how scared he was to come to Flin Flon to play and stuff. Get their ass kicked.
I love getting the two sides of the stories.
Yeah.
Because, of course, he tells me stories about mocking you, obviously, you being afraid to go wherever it is. And in the end, after 30 plus years, everybody becomes the victor in their own narrative. So both stories can be true. Who cares?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, let's talk about Flin Flon. Are you how is your role there compared to your role in Philadelphia? Like, when you go back, is it like, oh, Clarke has returned, let's give him the key to the city? Do people have memories like that, or are you just another? I mean, it's amazing how many great players that town has produced.
Yeah, it is over the years. And Jerry Hart, who played on the island, and Teddy Hampson, there's still some that go back, and I'm just one of them. I'm not anything special in Flin Flon.
Mm-hmm.
It's my home. I have a cabin on the lake, and go to town for groceries and once in a while for a couple of beers and stuff, but there's no go to the golf course.
Right.
Everybody's the same, the way it should be.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
Some people want that special treatment.
No.
Let's obviously get into why you're here. You're a captain of the greatest team in Philadelphia history.
Yeah.
Certainly one of the greatest teams of arguably of all time in the NHL. What made you the captain? Because you had a lot of strong personalities. You had everybody there had a leadership quality in some regard there. Why do you think you ended up with the C on your jersey?
I wished that I had a decently smart answer to tell you, but I don't. Freddie Shero came. Eddie Van Imp was our captain,
Mm-hmm.
and Freddie Shero came to me and he said, "I want you to be captain." And I said, "There's not a chance. We got a good captain. I don't want to be captain." And about 2 months later, he just said to me, "You're the captain." So I went to Eddie Van Imp and I said, "Geez, Eddie, Freddie made me captain. I'm really sorry." He said, "I don't think I should be." But Eddie was a really good man.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "No, you should be captain. You're the best player now, and it's time for you to take over." But I never had. There's no book on how to be a captain, right? You can't read a book and that teaches you how to be a captain. Some people, you got to have the right people around you too to support what you're trying to do and stuff. It's over the years, there's very few players who have been what you would call great leaders. A Messier. What made Messier step out from other great players and stuff? I don't know the characteristics, but they're hard to find a good captain, or else everybody would have one. Everybody has a captain, but not all of them provide the proper leadership and support and all that kind of stuff. For those people, that's not like a Messi. That wouldn't be a job.
No.
Captain. It just came easy to him. Just knew instinctively what was right.
And we're definitely going to get back to that. Did Ed Van Imp have any advice for you?
No, I don't recall that. In those days, we were just starting to become a good team, so we had lots of holes that had to be filled and stuff. But no, I don't recall him ever. But anything that the captain thinks is right to help the team, we had him and Joey Watson and some of the older guys that supported everything as long as it was good. Mm-hmm. And of course, then the players like your dad and Selesky and Schultze and all those guys that come onto our team, they just fit right in with what we were trying to do and added to it.
And in the locker room, my dad, one of the things my dad talks about all the time is locker room culture. Is it you that they turn to for a rousing speech? Because, you can, there are captains. Mario Lemieux, I think, is a good example. Very soft-spoken, didn't like really addressing, but would just go out and be the best player on the ice. Yeah. You were the best player. If you won't admit that, I'll just tell you, you were the best player on the team. Was that it? Was that enough? Or if you guys were down, 2-1 to the Bruins and going into the third period, was it kind of up to you to get everybody fired up to go out there for the last 20 minutes?
No, I never saw that. Everybody in the locker room has something to say, trying to encourage each teammate and stuff like that. But the odd time, if I felt we needed something from a particular player, I'd quietly get a hold of him and, demand that he give what the team needed, at least for this night. Ricky McClish was an example. Before we beat the Bruins for the Cup, before the game, I got him in the bathroom and I said, Ricky, if you don't play the best game of your life, we're not going to win this. And he said, I'll play it. I'll play the best game of my life. And he did, get him to make a commitment to the team. And you can only do that once in a while. The enthusiasm on the team comes from the team itself, not from one player.
And from the city. And I kind of want to get into your relationship with the city. You're an incredibly new franchise and really an incredibly new sport in the region. The closest team before that being the Bruins. And, there's no way anyone from Philadelphia is going to root for anyone from Boston. So you come along and in a rather quick 6 years, all of a sudden you're there, you're competitive, you're winning the cup, and you're now the darlings of Philadelphia. And it's funny, I've spoken to a lot of people who were in the city at the time. They couldn't name the mayor. They certainly couldn't name the governor of Pennsylvania, but sure as hell, everybody knows who Bobby Clarke is. And how was that newfound fame and that newfound adoration from literally, that was as united as Philadelphia has ever been. You saw everybody throwing an arm around to one another and cheering on this team. What was it like to go from, as you mentioned, Flin Flon, which I think a lot of people in this podcast are probably Googling to find out exactly even what country that's in. It's Canada. And to go from that to just this massive metropolis where all of a sudden millions of people are interested in your life, no, not just on the ice, but off the ice.
We didn't realize until we had won the cup and the parade the next day when 2 million people come out. I don't think we had any idea as players that we captured the town like we did. And I think we were probably lucky. The majority of us come from small places, and we were the last all-Canadian team of players that won the cup. Not that that's, but guys come from small towns. They're all humble. They weren't, and by the time the adoration come, even though we were young, we'd been men working. We're 23, 24, 25-year-old guys. Your dad, my dad, Schultze, all those guys. So there was nobody doing what you see so many athletes do now. Look at me, aren't I great? We were all, as a group, the majority of us are young and married and had young kids like you were and my kids were and stuff. And we had a softball team in the summer, played about 20 games. Mm-hmm. Just go to our trainer, Jimmy McKenzie, set it all up. We just go out and play against a slow pitch, of course, play against a team and then go back to their place for hot dogs and beer after and stuff. We were just part of the community. All our kids were in the public schools and stuff. And we were just part of the community. And obviously we benefited from what we did on the ice and stuff, but we never got, I don't think our egos were ever out of control.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I would have been a monster. And that's something I love. I've talked to a few of your teammates now. I talked to Bernie, who's just so damn weird, so wonderfully weird. Yeah. I love, he's got a catchphrase now that he just shoehorns into everything. It was a wwonderful thing. But Schultze and Reggie Leach, and I love hearing about what you just mentioned. You had a softball team. It's like you were just another accounting firm almost. You happened to be Philadelphia NHL Stanley Cup champions, but after work you'd all just hit up Rexy's. I've heard a couple of great stories. Lou Nolan had some fantastic stories about Rexy's, and interacted with the fans. Which, if you're a fan in today's game, if you happen to see one player out by themselves, it's miraculous, especially if they're by themselves. Usually they have a bit of an entourage, but you could walk into Rexy's and see 7, 8, 9, 20 of you guys all at the same time. I'd love to hear more about that, because today's modern athlete even if they wanted to, I think would be advised not to do that. But it became part of your guys' whole persona.
Yeah. And we were never, I don't know quite again how I would describe it, but we could go sit at the bar in Rexy's and have a few beers and a sandwich, and there'd be 10 other guys sitting at the bar, guys who come off work or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just talk with them. We weren't any different than the normal working man in our personalities. I think we fit in easily with the people, never even realizing we were doing that. And what happens to a good team like ours, you find out with hindsight, is that after a while, we'd all been in the city for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and there's trades going to be made and stuff, but everybody gets their own life. When we started, you never went anywhere without a teammate or group of teammates, or if you're going out for dinner, you'd call a teammate and his wife and all those things. And then eventually we all get friends outside of the game, and it's normal. It's not, but that's what starts breaking a team apart.
Yeah.
The friends, but your own life gets in the way of the team, and you're raising kids and got to go to kids' ball games and meet more people and meet, all those kind of things. So it's really hard to keep a team really tight for too long.
Yeah. And then you end up inevitably playing against, the bullies. And it's still my favorite Fred Shiro quote, win today, we'll walk together forever. But in talking to Schultze, 2 years later, he and my dad are fighting in different uniforms.
Yeah.
Did you, and of course, both have a different version of who won. Did you ever, I'm sure you fought some ex-teammates. Was that surreal?
Well, I played, for me, Reggie Leach was my best friend, and he played in Oakland. Mm-hmm. For years. We'd come through the juniors together and stuff, and we're still real close, but friends. But when I played against Oakland, I would never bother Reggie, because but most of the time, there were players you played against that after you'd won a Stanley Cup with them, you'd never play bad against them. You play honest, you try and beat them, but there's never for me, I was never chippy. I wouldn't have been slashing at your dad or slashing at somebody else that I played with and
Right.
won games with. But that's to be expected.
So you go on and I'm sure, you never expected to be, or maybe you did. Maybe all players do, to begin and finish your career with the Flyers. And a couple of episodes ago, I had Glenn Sather on, who I feel like there's a bit of a parallel in between you two, in that you immediately went from a player to a different role. He went to coach. He went to management. You stepped off the ice and immediately became the general manager. But first, I want to just ask you about your retirement. I was looking up your last season. You're still playing at a high level. Why'd you decide to quit or to retire? I guess is a better word.
Well, actually, I hadn't. I still felt I was good for a few more years. By that time, my scoring was down a little bit, but I was a good defensive player. So, I would have easily been able to play. Jay Snider had taken over the Flyers from his dad, and he wanted to change the club and wanted to do things different than what his dad did. And so he came to me and just said, he interviewed me and spent a long time, and I didn't even really know. And then he said to me, we'd like you to, I'll offer you the GM's job. And I didn't know. I said, oh, Christ. I don't know about that. I still want to play. But so I went home and I started thinking, well, if Flyers offer me this job, they must feel that I slipped quite a bit as a player, that I've hurt the club, just taking some other young players' jobs. You can find lots of reasons to justify what I did, but I took the general manager's job anyway and wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to learn to be a GM. You got to hang around. And those days were simple because we weren't dealing with salary caps and all the rules that are in those days, but it's still hard managing a team, even in those days.
Especially because you were just on the ice with a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. 1 minute you're a teammate, the next time you're their boss. And it took. What I found, interestingly enough, at the start it's all personal. When you were trying to get a contract from me, it became personal with the agents. Your opinion, just say you were representing a player, your opinion would be the player's worth 100,000, mine's he's worth 60. So there was nobody, you weren't using stats. You weren't saying, well, my guy got 12 minutes of ice time in this game and this game and this game, and he averages 15 a season, and he scored 3 shorthanded goals. None of those stats come into play. It was just, my opinion is, on my hockey team, he's worth this. And your opinion is, well, this is my client and he's worth this. So you did end up getting into some bitter fights over minute amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got better. The Players Association got a lot better. The agents got a lot better, and the managers got a lot better with using statistics and all that kind of stuff to base your, at least something black and white that you could see to base your opinions on. And I don't think it's as hard in today's world. The free agents are different, but in today's world, it's all stats and everything else, analytics and all that stuff they use.
Right. Bonuses are just based on, as you mentioned, analytics, which I guess it extracts a little bit of the personal, aspect out of it. But that must have been a hard thing for you to get over. Because as a player, I would imagine it would always feel personal. It's when people say it's not personal, it's business. It's always a person not getting the short end of the stick that says that.
Yeah. It's in those days, there's a lot of, when I turned pro, it was 1-year contracts. They were just 1-year contracts. And the amount of money was, I made $14,000 my first year, and I think I got to 17 the next, but that's just the way it was. It's same for every player.
Mm-hmm.
And the players, the teams that were when Bevan started, the teams that were the best, Boston was a cheap. Harry Sinden, great general manager, but they didn't spend much money on players, and the teams that spent money on players were frowned on. I signed a couple free agents, and the other managers would be mad at you for doing it, or mad at you for giving somebody too much money and stuff.
Because then you would escalate it. You create like
and create a higher level.
Right. Okay. Who were those free agents? You remember?
Yeah, well, I signed Peter Forsberg and Jeremy Roenick, those kind of guys, and they wanted to come to Philadelphia, and I didn't mind paying them. Mr. Snider didn't mind paying them. We always
right. Yeah.
We didn't mind being a high payroll team.
You saw that, was that $14,000 you mentioned? That was your first NHL contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. $14,000. So for you you saw the shift, because it happened in the late 80s, post USFL, which was the competitive league to the NFL that changed salaries forever. Yeah. So you saw the difference where you saw the change where NHL players were, it was like a white collar job for sure. But then it went to like everyone's a millionaire, or the bulk of the players are millionaires. I suppose it was inevitable with TV contracts and the way and ticket prices going up and everything. But did it break your heart a little bit? Because as that happened, the connection with the everyday fan, had to be sacrificed a bit. And, the more money you pour into something, the more, in a lot of ways, the more it excludes a lot of people as well.
I think that's very true what you're saying, but if you've ever played, you're always happy when the next generation of players gets more. When my first few years in the Players Association and stuff, it had just started a couple of years before I turned pro, the Players Association, but every year we were going up about 10% a year at the time. So it seemed pretty good. We started off low, the salaries were low, and even going up 10%, lots of guys are pretty happy to make 35,000.
Sure.
And then I went to the players making 100 and players making a couple hundred, and then it just obviously took off. And more teams too. Lots of more teams, and every team wants a star. So a lot of times you get players they're the star on their own team, not be a star in the league, but they're still getting star money.
Yeah.
It's been beneficial to players.
As a player, you were pretty much beyond reproach in terms of how the fan base reacted to you. And then as general manager, you're starting to be criticized and villainized in a lot of way. And probably, for the first time in your life as a Philadelphian, you get fired.
Yeah.
How much of a shock to the system? You were with the organization long enough to be a villain.
Well, I think that comes with the territory. And Keith Allen was there for a long time, but he built it and won. So he was never going to be vilified and shouldn't have been. But by the end of the fifth, we went to the finals 2 of the first 3 years I was manager. And by the end of the 5th year, I'd made some mistakes, and Jay wanted to change things, and that was Flyers team. So he fired me. And I thought I was going to spend my whole life with the Flyers. I never even thought about going. But hindsight tells me I got a job in Minnesota the next year, and Bob Gainey went with me, and it was a great experience. I learned from Bob Gainey something new, something different city, different organization for the development of a manager. Changing can be pretty good, just like it can be for a player. Getting new views, new people, new ideas.
Yeah, get out of Philly for a while, for a couple, but 2 years. One of those years in the you made it to the finals. You're up against a juggernaut.
Yeah,
but then you came home again.
Yeah, Our team in Minnesota was moving to Dallas.
Yeah.
And I still own my home in Philly. I still considered Philly my home. And I debated, and then Mr. Snider actually called me and said, why don't you come back and be a senior guy with the Flyers? So I thought about it for a while, and I didn't want to go to Dallas. And I said, all right. So I went back. But 2 months later, I knew I'd made a mistake. There was nothing. I was still young. I was in my 40s and still wanted to work and stuff. And there wasn't anything for me. Russ Farwell was the GM. And so when Florida got an expansion team, I applied for that and got that team to start that team. So that was a real good experience, an expansion team and putting a group together, hiring all new people, scouts, everybody. And we had a good group down there. And then Flyers had about 5 or 6 pretty tough years. And Jay Snider was done. He's leaving, and Mr. Snider was taken over, but he had been out of the hockey world, not out of the Flyers world, but out of the hockey world for 5 or 6 years, 7, 8 years by then. And he really didn't know people to take over the Flyers. So he called me, asked me if I'd come back and manage the Flyers. I had to go in. I don't know if you ever knew Wayne Huizinga or know the name Blockbuster and all that. One of the
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, he owned the Dolphins and the Marlins and whatever. He really good man. But I had to go to his house and ask him. I was under contract, and I said I'd really like to go back to Philadelphia. I said that's my home, and I still got a couple kids in school and stuff, high school, and he was not a very happy man when I left. Because we had a good thing going in Florida.
Canceled all your Blockbuster memberships. You're never rented from me.
There you go. Yeah.
But was part of it too. I mean, there's 2 people that just have absolutely universal respect from players of that era. One is Fred Shiro, and then the other is, and you refer to him as my dad does, and always will. His past is Mr. Snider. If Jay Snider had made the same offer, would you have considered it, or was there a lot of gravitas to it coming directly from Mr. Snider's mouth?
Oh, I doubt if I would have come back for Jay. My loyalty was always to Mr. Snider. We were close, not socially necessarily, but we socialized just like with him once in a while, like your dad and mom did with her. But for whatever the reason, when he asked, it wasn't a real tough decision to decide to come back. He asked for help. I doubt if I would have come back otherwise if it wasn't from him.
Yeah.
Not a discredit to Jay, but
I feel bad for Jay a lot of times. And he fired you, so you might not. But
Jay and I have remained. I never blamed Jay for firing you. I mean, there's no point in blaming Jay. I blame myself for making mistakes and stuff. Mistakes that I obviously didn't intend to make, but they were mine. And it turned out to be a good thing. Jay and I have remained close. I think Jay took over following Keith Allen and his dad. And he was only 28, so he wasn't a real world businessman experience, wise. He took over a tough job, and just to compete with what Mr. Snider and Keith Allen did was tough for anybody following them.
Sure.
Jay had to follow his dad. That's a tough act to follow.
So you come back again, and I remember where I was. I know you weren't involved with this, and I'm going to be speaking to Russ Falwell at some point in an upcoming episode. I remember I was weirdly in Seattle, where I ended up living for quite a while, when I heard the announcement of the Eric Lindros trade. And I had already been collecting his Oshawa Generals cards because it's an Eric Lindros rookie card was as bankable as you could ever make as an investment. Yeah. And they start going down the list of what the Flyers gave up, and it was essentially 20 years worth of draft picks, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't remember there being any consternation that day, only cheers coming from the Philly fan base. So, you know, you come in a few years later, and one of the things that you're tasked with is kind of mentoring. Would that be the right verb?
Yeah.
Mentoring a young
A little
superstar
bit, yeah.
who is, you know, has all the talent, as talented as a player who's ever come into the league, but has some drawbacks as well. There's some difficulties between him and the organization. What exactly were you asked to do, and how difficult was it to do it?
It's I think what happened, Eric was built up, rightfully so, as this great, great young player. But he was still 18.
Mhm.
Like, you can't make a man out of an 18-year-old. He's got to grow into it and learn. And I think Eric didn't really have the opportunity. He didn't have the opportunity to fit in with a team and learn how the team was. He was the team when he come to Philadelphia at 18 years old. You know, the team, they traded everybody to get him. So there were basically 3 or 4 players left, I think, maybe to help a little bit, but they were a bad team. And regardless of how good he was, he got the burden of that. And it was probably really unfair to put that on a young player, any young player, and no 18-year-old can carry a team like he was being asked to do. So it took him some tough years and stuff, but he did have about 5 or 6 really good years with us.
You did.
Where he was the best player in the game most nights, and yeah. And then he started getting the head injuries, and I guess he'd had some previously, but the head injuries eventually they affected his play, and you know, he wanted to, and I don't blame him. He wanted to get out of Philadelphia. It was
Because of the way the fans were treating him, or
no, not at all. The fans were treating him good, I think. No, I think it became a burden being the captain for him. Mm-hmm. You know, he never had ever had a chance just to not be the star, just go play. And I think when he went to New York, he played. You know, he's had those concussions. He didn't play that well in Toronto, Dallas, but by that time, I think his head injuries had taken a lot of starch out of him.
But you were the star player for a decade, you know. What is when you would spend, because I know there were difficulties, but with his parents, that's legendary. That's common knowledge that they were. I don't even know what the adjective is for it. We'll say difficult. That they certainly intervened in a lot of ways that was detrimental overall, I believe, to Eric's career. But when he would come to you, and I don't know what your personal relationship with him was like, or if you were able to separate that between your relationship with his parents. I mean, how when he described sort of his exhaustion with being the centerpiece of a team, a role that you played for like over a decade, what kind of things would you tell him?
We didn't really have those types of conversations. Mm-hmm. It was about, our conversations would be about when I was managing, about hockey and stuff like that, and life and how things were going. Generally the same as I did with most players. I like to hang around. I'd wander in the locker room, talk to players, just because I liked hanging around the locker room. Mm-hmm. In those days, managers stayed right away. Most of the managers did. They didn't intermingle with the players, and I did, and it paid off for us because we ended up, you know, going to the finals a few times and stuff. We had some pretty good teams there.
Were you friends ever?
Probably now I would. We're not friends, but we're equally
friendly,
nice to each other and stuff. There's no bitterness or nothing. all that's long gone, and there shouldn't be any bitterness. I mean, we did have some public wars, but from, I would justify it by saying whatever I was doing, I was looking out for the team. No player, in my opinion, is bigger than the team. And of course, they'd have their own arguments. I don't know what they are, but we didn't. Once he was traded and stuff, after that, I forgot all about it, and he probably did.
You have someone who does a really good impersonation of you. I hope you're aware. His name's Joe Conklin.
Yeah.
It's good. I'm sure, there's a lot of people who pretend when someone is kind of poking fun at them that, I'm not aware of it. I'm sure you're aware of it. But I think what fascinates me most about your career is that there's the two phases. And then in the end, you're still as revered as any Philly, not even hockey personality, any sports personality in the history of the city. But there was times where every time I would read about you, it was negative, and it was odd, because a lot of the other the teammates that my dad had during that time, they weren't in the public limelight the way that you were. But it was very strange for me to read editorials about the rotten Bobby Clarke and the bad job that he's doing. Was there a time you just wanted to say, screw it, screw the city, after all I've done for you, I'm out of here?
No, I never thought that way. And again, you get hindsight looking at it. When I went through the team wasn't playing as good, so naturally the manager's going to get some discredit for that and get criticized. And I think you've probably seen numerous times over the years, once one writer starts criticizing somebody, then there's two writers, then there's three writers that kind of follow the tail there.
Yeah.
And that happened, somebody wouldn't write about hockey for a month, and then you write a story on cutting me up because five other guys that already did it. It wasn't their imagination wasn't too good sometimes.
That's hard. So you didn't avoid it. A lot of players again say, I don't listen to that, I don't read that, but you were aware of it.
You know what, over the years, again, I found that writers that are good writers who aren't out to just be critical, they have a lot of sources of information. I used to love to read Al Morganti. I used to love to read Jay Greenberg, because there was information in what they knew the game, and they could have information that I could use, because they'd talk to people all over the league.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be getting information from people that I had no access to. They put them into their stories, and you could figure things out, and they'd give up trade rumors and stuff. And you never know when, but then there's also writers who I just couldn't stand the way they wrote, couldn't stand their criticism, but there's nothing I could do about it.
Who? Can you give me a name? I'd love to know one.
Well, the guy I had most of my battles with was Tim Panaccio. My opinion was his goal was just to destroy.
Yeah.
He never wanted to help the team. He never wanted to be an asset to anything, just destroy the team that he was covering. And they run him out of the Eagles. That's how he ended up in hockey. The Eagles didn't want him back, so they stuck him in hockey. So he just caused trouble for everybody. He'd even admitted that he just make things up. But
yeah, well,
you could do, but there's nothing you can do. That's just the way it was.
Yeah. I want to kind of ask you a few questions going back to what we talked about at the beginning of this interview about you as a captain. You are you mentioned Messier. I think that if I were talking to Messier, he'd probably mention you as just sort of these iconic captains that are referenced whenever you're talking about great leadership. My dad on the Penguins, for instance. Do you think the Flyers, since you have had, because I'm talking to Dave Poulin next week, and I would actually put him on a list of excellent Flyers captains, but there's certainly been some duds.
Yeah.
We'll talk about their current captain, Claude Giroux,
Mhm.
he's a great Flyer, but do you think he's the right guy to be the captain of that team?
Well, he certainly has been for a long time. He was our best player and a good leader and everything. And I don't know how long he's going to be captain. I mean, as long as he's here, is he going to be the captain or the team? When you start losing like we're losing, they're going to look at everything, whether who should be the captain or who should be the coach or who should be traded. Those are all just factors. And in Claude's case, I'm sure it'll be discussed, but I don't know anything about that kind of thing. I know he's been a good captain for time for the Flyers. And you're right, Davey Poulin was a great captain.
It's a particularly tough year to watch this team. They had such a great finish last year, strong start to this year with, and carried over most of the same team from previous season. And then March comes and they just tank. When they start heading south like that, do you just turn it off? Do you scream at the TV? What's it like for you to watch your beloved Flyers give up, I think, the fifth most goals in the NHL in a month since 1993?
Yeah, it's, I don't know. Disappointing, I guess, is probably a general term when you're watched, but it's disturbing too, to watch our team play with a low end of enthusiasm, a low end of energy. We've generally, in our history, we've been a pretty hardworking, big, good team. And this team either hasn't developed a personality or maybe we never had one. I don't know. But I thought we did. I thought we had all those habits, but everything's gone down the tube in 2 months. And I have no idea. You'd have to ask the coaches or the manager or somebody. They'll have pretty good ideas of what's going on. Mm-hmm. I don't.
And final question for you, Clarke. Again, thanks for coming on.
It's been fun. Thank you.
The greatest single memory when you close your eyes, if there's just an image, not even a game necessarily, but just a fleeting moment that if you could relive over and over and over again, what do you think it would be?
Holding the first cup up.
Yeah.
At the end of that game with Bernie standing there and they hold the cup. We all say the same thing. That's why we play the game. And the majority of players don't ever win the cup, but when you accomplish it, that's something that's not matchable for me.
Yeah. Well, number 16, Bobby Clarke, thank you so much for joining me. Yeah. And summer's around the corner. Have a great summer, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
All right, Zach. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, man.
Say hi to your folks for me.
Certainly will.